Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. Introduction. It was a steamy August afternoon in New York City. The kind of day that makes everyone a little grumpy, a little short-tempered. A man, tired from his day, stepped onto a Madison Avenue bus, bracing for a sullen, uncomfortable ride home. But as he got on, something unexpected happened. The bus driver, a middle-aged man with a huge, enthusiastic smile, greeted him with a friendly, "Hi, how you doing?" He did this for every single passenger who boarded. At first, people were startled. Lost in their own moody thoughts, most barely responded. But as the bus crawled through the thick city traffic, a slow, quiet magic began to unfold. The driver kept up a running commentary for everyone on the bus. He'd point out a great sale at a department store, a fascinating exhibit at a museum, a new movie that had just opened. His delight in the city, in the simple possibilities of life, was infectious. By the time people started getting off, the sullen shells they had entered with had melted away. When the driver shouted out a cheerful, "So long, have a great day," each person, one by one, gave a smiling response. That bus driver, in his own small way, was an urban peacemaker. He had the power to transform the mood of a bus full of strangers, to soften their hearts, and send ripples of good feeling out into the city. This story, which opens Daniel Goleman's masterpiece, Emotional Intelligence, captures the very essence of the book. It illustrates a quiet power, a different kind of smarts, that has nothing to do with test scores or academic degrees. The book Emotional Intelligence, first published in 1995, landed like a thunderclap. It sold millions of copies, was translated into dozens of languages, and introduced a new phrase into our everyday vocabulary, EQ. Goleman, a science reporter for the New York Times, didn't invent the term. He credits two psychologists, John Mayer and Peter Salovey, for that. But he took this fascinating academic concept and revealed its profound importance to the world. For decades, we had been obsessed with IQ as the ultimate measure of a person's potential. But Goleman asked a question that was both simple and revolutionary. If IQ is so important, why do people with high IQs sometimes fail spectacularly in their lives, while people with modest IQs can thrive? The answer, he argued, lies in a set of skills he called emotional intelligence. And in this journey today, I promise you, you will discover what those skills are. You'll learn about the hidden battles happening inside your own mind, understand why you sometimes act in ways you later regret, and, most importantly, you'll see that this other kind of intelligence isn't fixed at birth. It can be learned. It can be nurtured. And mastering it might just be the most important thing you ever do for your success and happiness in life. So, let's begin. Book summary. Let me tell you a story about a young man named Jason. Jason was a straight-A high school student. He was brilliant, driven, and had his heart set on getting into Harvard Medical School. In his mind, his entire future depended on a perfect academic record. But then, his physics teacher, Mr. Poligrudo, gave him an 80 on a quiz. AB. To Jason, this wasn't just a grade. It was a threat to his entire dream. Believing his future was in jeopardy, he did something that seems completely irrational for someone so intelligent. He took a butcher knife to school. In a confrontation in the physics lab, he stabbed his teacher before being subdued. How could someone so smart do something so incredibly dumb? This is the central puzzle that Daniel Goleman sets out to solve. For a long time, we've believed that our intellect, our rational mind, is in charge. But Goleman reveals that this is a myth. In reality, we have two minds, living side by side. There is the rational mind, the one that thinks, that ponders and reflects. It's the part of you that's listening to this right now, processing the words and ideas. But there is another system of knowing, the emotional mind. It's impulsive, powerful, and sometimes completely illogical. It's the difference between thinking something is a good idea and feeling in your heart that it's the right thing to do. To understand why the emotional mind is so powerful, we have to take a quick journey back in time, millions of years, to see how our brain was built. Our brain didn't just appear all at once. It grew from the bottom up. The most primitive part is the brain stem, at the top of your spinal cord. It's the root, regulating basic life functions like breathing and metabolism. It keeps you alive, but it doesn't think or learn. From this brainstem, the emotional centers, the limbic system, emerged. This part of the brain added emotions to our repertoire. When you're in the grip of a craving, or overcome with rage, or head over heels in love, it's the limbic system that has you in its grasp. Only much later, millions of years later, did the thinking brain, the neocortex, evolve on top of it. The fact that the thinking brain grew from the emotional brain tells us everything about their relationship. There was an emotional brain long before there was a rational one. And deep within this emotional brain is a tiny, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Think of the amygdala as your emotional sentinel, a kind of neural alarm system. It's constantly scanning everything you see, hear, and feel, asking one simple, primitive question: is this something I hate, something that hurts me, something I fear? If the answer is yes, the amygdala reacts instantaneously. It's like a neural tripwire. It hijacks the rest of the brain, declaring an emergency before the thinking brain, the neocortex, has even had a chance to fully process what's happening. Goleman calls this an emotional hijacking. Think back to the last time you lost it. Maybe you blew up at a family member or a friend, saying things you didn't mean. Later, when you calmed down, you might have thought to yourself, I don't know what came over me. That feeling of not knowing what came over you is the hallmark of an amygdala hijacking. Goleman shares the tragic story of Richard Robles, a man involved in what became known as the Career Girl murders. Robles broke into an apartment, thinking no one was home. But one of the young women, Janice Wiley, was there. He tied her up. Just as he was leaving, her roommate came home. As he started to tie her up too, Janice warned him that she would remember his face and help the police find him. Robles, who had promised himself this was his last crime, panicked. He completely lost control. In a frenzy of rage and fear, he grabbed a soda bottle and attacked both women, killing them. Years later, looking back on that moment, he lamented, "I just went bananas. My head just exploded." His head didn't just explode. His amygdala took over. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux discovered how this hijacking happens. Sensory signals from your eyes or ears travel first to a part of the brain called the thalamus. From there, the signal splits. Most of it goes on the high road to the neocortex, the thinking brain, which carefully analyzes the information to figure out the best response. But a smaller, faster portion of the signal takes a low road, a neural back alley that goes directly from the thalamus to the amygdala. This shortcut allows the amygdala to get a crude, quick and dirty signal, and start reacting before the neocortex has finished its more detailed analysis. This emergency route is an evolutionary lifesaver. If you're walking in the woods and see a long, curved shape on the path, your amygdala screams snake, and you jump back in an instant. A split second later, your neocortex finishes processing and realizes it was just a stick. That slight delay in jumping back could have been fatal for our ancestors. The amygdala's motto is, react now, ask questions later. The problem is, this quick and dirty system can be sloppy. It works on associative logic. If a situation today has just one or two key elements that are similar to a painful memory from the past, the amygdala can declare it a match and trigger all the old feelings of fear, anger, or sadness. This is why a simple comment can sometimes provoke a massive overreaction. The emotional mind is reacting to the present as if it were the past. This brings us back to Jason, the student who stabbed his teacher. His high IQ was housed in his neocortex, but his dream of Harvard was tied to his emotional brain. When he received that grade of 80, his amygdala didn't see a number on a page. It saw a mortal threat to his entire identity and future. And in that moment, it hijacked his rational mind, leading to a tragic and senseless act. So if we are all wired for these emotional hijackings, what can we do about it? How do we stop being slaves to our passions? This is where emotional intelligence comes in. Goleman, drawing on the work of Mayer and Salovey, breaks it down into 5 key skills. These skills are the antidotes to emotional hijacking. They are the tools for harmonizing our two minds. The first, and most fundamental skill, is knowing your emotions. Self-awareness. Goleman tells an old Japanese tale about a belligerent samurai who challenges a Zen master to explain heaven and hell. The monk replies with scorn, "You're nothing but a lout. I can't waste my time with the likes of you." His honor attacked, the samurai flies into a rage, draws his sword, and yells, "I could kill you for your impertinence." The monk calmly replies, "That is hell." Startled by the truth of the master's words, seeing the fury that had him in its grip, the samurai calms down, sheaths his sword, and bows, thanking the monk for the insight. "And that," says the monk, "is heaven." The samurai's sudden awakening to his own emotional state illustrates the crucial difference between being in a feeling and being aware that you are in a feeling. This self-awareness is the keystone of emotional intelligence. It's a kind of neutral, observing mode, where your mind watches your feelings without getting swept away by them. It's the difference between being consumed by rage and having the thought, "I am feeling anger right now." That simple shift is incredibly powerful. It's the first step toward gaining control. Some people seem to have this skill naturally. They are what psychologist John Mayer calls self-aware. They have a clarity about their emotional lives. When they get into a bad mood, they don't ruminate on it endlessly. They recognize it and can start to move out of it. Others are engulfed. They feel swamped by their emotions, helpless to escape them. They feel they have no control over their emotional life. And some are accepting. They may be clear about what they are feeling, but they just accept their moods and don't try to change them. This can be fine if you're in a good mood, but it's a pattern often found in people who are resigned to their own despair. The ultimate failure of self-awareness is a condition called alexithymia, from the Greek for lack of words for emotion. People with alexithymia have no idea what they are feeling. Goleman describes Gary, a successful surgeon who infuriated his fiancée because he was completely emotionally flat. He could talk brilliantly about science and art, but when it came to his own feelings, he was silent. He simply didn't know what he felt. This lack of self-awareness extends to a lack of gut feelings. We all know what it feels like to have an intuitive sense about a decision. Goleman introduces us to Elliot, a man who had a brain tumor removed from his prefrontal lobes, the part of the brain that connects our emotional centers to our thinking centers. After the surgery, Elliot was intellectually as sharp as ever. His IQ was unchanged. But his life fell apart. He couldn't hold a job, his wife left him, and he made disastrous financial decisions. His neurologist, Antonio Damasio, discovered the problem. Elliot had lost all access to his feelings. He could rationally analyze the pros and cons of any decision, but because he felt nothing, every option seemed neutral. He couldn't even decide on a date for his next appointment because he had no preference. Elliot's story teaches us a profound lesson. Our gut feelings, our emotions, are not enemies of good decision-making. They are essential guides. They are the emotional wisdom we've gathered from all our past experiences, sending us signals that steer us in the right direction. Without access to that wisdom, reason is blind. The second domain of emotional intelligence builds directly on the first, managing emotions. Once you are aware of your feelings, you can begin to manage them. This doesn't mean suppressing them. Every feeling has its value. A life without passion would be a dull wasteland. The goal, as Aristotle said, is appropriate emotion. It's about balance. Keeping our distressing emotions in check is the key to emotional well-being. Think about anger. Of all the negative emotions, Goleman says, anger is the most seductive. The self-righteous inner monologue that fuels it can feel exhilarating. It gives us energy. This is why the popular idea of catharsis, that venting your rage makes you feel better, is so persistent. But research shows it's a fallacy. More often than not, venting anger simply pumps up the emotional brain's arousal, leaving you more angry, not less. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. So what works? One of the most powerful ways to diffuse anger is to challenge the thoughts that are fueling it. Anger almost always starts with a trigger thought. Imagine another car cuts you off on the freeway. Your first thought might be, "That idiot, he could have killed me." That thought then leads to another, and another, each one adding more fuel to the fire. Your body floods with adrenaline, preparing for a fight. But what if you had a different thought? Maybe he didn't see me. Maybe he's rushing to the hospital. That more charitable line of thinking can short-circuit the entire rage cycle. Another key is to give yourself a cool-down period. This means physically getting away from the situation for a little while. Go for a walk. Listen to some music. Distraction is a powerful tool because it's hard to stay angry when you're doing something pleasant. But this only works if you don't spend that time ruminating on the angry thoughts. You have to truly shift your attention. The same principles apply to managing anxiety. Worry is the heart of all anxiety. In a sense, it's a useful evolutionary tool. It's our mind rehearsing what might go wrong and how to deal with it. But chronic worry is a low-grade emotional hijacking. It recycles the same fears over and over without ever finding a solution. Psychologist Thomas Borkovec found that the best way to control worry is, again, through self-awareness and challenging the thoughts. First, catch the worry as it starts. Then, apply a relaxation method, like deep breathing. And finally, take a critical stance toward the worrisome thoughts. Ask yourself, is it really likely that this terrible thing will happen? What are some constructive steps I can take? And what about sadness? Melancholy is a part of life. Sadness after a loss is necessary. It forces us to retreat, to mourn, and to adjust. But when it turns into depression, it becomes paralyzing. One of the biggest dangers in depression is rumination, endlessly worrying about what's making you sad. This passive immersion in sadness just makes it worse. The most effective strategies for lifting a bad mood are active ones. Challenge the depressing thoughts. Schedule a pleasant, distracting event, a funny movie, a game with friends. Aerobic exercise is another powerful mood lifter because it changes your body's physiological state. And one of the most potent, but least used, antidotes is helping others. Depression feeds on self-preoccupation. Helping someone else lifts us out of ourselves. The third skill of emotional intelligence is what Goleman calls the master aptitude, motivating oneself. This is about marshaling your emotions in the service of a goal. It's about using feelings like enthusiasm, persistence, and confidence to drive you toward achievement. Goleman shares a personal story of being a freshman in college, facing a calculus exam he hadn't studied for. He sat there for an hour, paralyzed by fear. His mind just raced with thoughts of the consequences. He couldn't think straight. His anxiety completely swamped his ability to even try to solve the problems. This is what powerful negative emotions do. They sabotage our working memory, the mental scratch pad where we hold the information we need to get a task done. Stress, as one consultant put it, makes people stupid. But positive emotions do the opposite. They enhance our ability to think and plan. Consider the famous marshmallow test, a study conducted by psychologist Walter Mischel. He brought 4-year-olds into a room, one by one, and placed a marshmallow in front of them. He told them he had to run an errand. If they could wait until he got back without eating the marshmallow, they could have 2 marshmallows. But if they couldn't wait, they could have the one, right now. It's a perfect little test of the battle between impulse and restraint. Some kids grabbed the marshmallow the second the door closed. But others fought the temptation. They covered their eyes, talked to themselves, sang songs, even tried to fall asleep. They were able to delay gratification. The truly astonishing part of this study came 12 to 14 years later, when the researchers tracked these children down as they were graduating from high school. The difference was dramatic. The kids who had been able to wait for the second marshmallow were now more socially competent, self-assertive, and better able to cope with the frustrations of life. They were more confident and dependable. And they were far superior as students. Their SAT scores were, on average, 210 points higher than the kids who had grabbed the marshmallow. At age 4, this simple test of impulse control was a more powerful predictor of their SAT scores than their IQ was at that age. The ability to delay gratification is a master skill. It's the root of all emotional self-regulation, and it underpins accomplishment of every sort, from staying on a diet to pursuing a medical degree. Hope and optimism are also powerful motivators. Psychologist C.R. Snyder defines hope as believing you have both the will and the way to accomplish your goals. He found that in college freshmen, their level of hope was a better predictor of their first semester grades than their SAT scores were. Optimism, a close cousin of hope, is about how you explain your successes and failures to yourself. Martin Seligman, a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, discovered that optimists see a failure as something temporary, specific, and changeable. A pessimist sees it as permanent, universal, and a result of some personal flaw they can't change. Seligman tells the story of Matt Biondi, an American swimmer in the 1988 Olympics. He was expected to win 7 gold medals, but in his first 2 events, he suffered heartbreaking defeats. The sportscasters predicted he would be crushed. But Biondi, who Seligman had tested and found to be a remarkable optimist, rebounded and went on to win gold in his next 5 events. His optimism acted as a buffer against hopelessness and despair. This is why, Seligman found, optimistic insurance salesmen sell far more than pessimistic ones. Every no is a small defeat. The optimist tells himself, "I'm using the wrong approach," and tries something different. The pessimist tells himself, "I'm a failure," and gives up. The ultimate state of harnessing emotions for performance is what psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow. You might know it as being in the zone. It's that state of blissful, effortless absorption in a task where you lose all track of time and self-consciousness. Flow happens when you're engaged in a task that slightly stretches your abilities. If it's too easy, you're bored. If it's too hard, you're anxious. Flow exists in that delicate channel between boredom and anxiety. Being able to enter flow is emotional intelligence at its best. The 4th skill is recognizing emotions in others, or empathy. Empathy is the fundamental people skill. It builds on self-awareness. The more open you are to your own emotions, the more skilled you will be at reading the feelings of others. People's emotions are rarely put into words. The key to empathy is the ability to read nonverbal cues, tone of voice, gesture, facial expression. Goleman says the roots of empathy can be traced back to infancy. Virtually from the day they are born, Babies get upset when they hear another baby cry. This is the earliest precursor to empathy. By the time they are a year or two old, they start actively trying to comfort others. Goleman shares the story of 15-month-old Michael, who saw his friend Paul crying. Michael went and got his own teddy bear to give to Paul. When Paul kept crying, Michael went and got Paul's security blanket for him. This ability to feel with another person is shaped profoundly by our earliest relationships. Psychiatrist Daniel studied the tiny, repeated exchanges between parents and children. He calls the most critical moments attunement. Attunement is when a parent senses what their child is feeling and reflects it back to them, not by simply imitating, but by matching the feeling in a different way. A baby squeals with delight, and the mother gives him a little jiggle, matching his level of excitement. These countless small moments of attunement give an infant the reassuring feeling of being emotionally connected, of being understood. When parents consistently fail to attune to a child's feelings, the child begins to avoid expressing, and perhaps even feeling, those emotions. The emotional costs of this misattunement can be huge. The lack of empathy has a dark side. It is a fault line common to rapists, child molesters, and violent criminals. Their inability to feel their victim's pain allows them to justify their horrific acts with lies like, "She wanted it," or "I'm not really hurting the child." The absolute inability to feel empathy or remorse is the hallmark of a psychopath. Psychopaths can be charming, but they are completely cold inside. Goleman argues that this may stem from a neural defect. Research by Robert Hare has shown that psychopaths' brains don't react to emotional words like kill in the same way normal brains do. And when they are about to receive an electric shock, they show no signs of the normal fear response. Because they don't feel fear themselves, they can't feel the fear and pain of their victims. Empathy, then, is the root of caring. It is the foundation of morality. To feel with another is to care. And that caring is what moves us to act, to help, to build a more just and compassionate world. This leads us to the fifth and final skill, handling relationships. This is the art of managing emotions in other people. It requires all the other skills we've talked about: self-awareness, self-management, and empathy. Goleman introduces us to a remarkable toddler named Jay, just 2.5 years old. His older brother, Len, is crying after being scolded by their mother. Jay, the original injured party, becomes incredibly concerned. He tries everything to soothe his brother. He pleads, "Stop crying, mate." He tries to get their mother to help. He pats his brother comfortingly. He helps put away the toys that caused the argument. He tries to distract him with a toy car. He even tries borrowing his mother's firm tone, threatening, "Smack your bottom." Jay's amazing repertoire of tactics shows how early this social art can emerge. Being able to manage emotions in others is the core of interpersonal effectiveness. One of the most powerful ways we influence others is through emotional contagion. Emotions are literally contagious. We are constantly sending out emotional signals in every encounter, and we catch moods from each other like a social virus. This happens unconsciously, through a subtle motor mimicry of facial expressions, posture, and tone of voice. Have you ever been in a great mood, then spent a few minutes with someone who was grumpy, and found your own mood starting to sour? Or the reverse? Have you ever felt down, but been lifted up by someone's cheerful energy? That's emotional contagion. The direction of mood transfer is usually from the person who is more emotionally expressive to the person who is more passive. The mark of a powerful leader, a charismatic performer, or simply a charming friend, is the ability to entrain the emotions of others, to set the emotional tone of an interaction. This emotional brilliance is best exemplified by a wonderful story Goleman shares from his friend, Terry Dobson, one of the first Americans to study the martial art of Aikido in Japan. One afternoon, Terry was on a train in Tokyo when a huge, belligerent, drunken laborer got on and started terrorizing the passengers. Terry, a master of Aikido, felt he had to intervene. But just as he was preparing to act, a tiny, elderly Japanese man in a kimono gave a joyous shout, "Hey!" He beckoned the drunk over with a smile. "What you been drinking?" the old man asked warmly. "Sake," the drunk bellowed. "And it's none of your business." "Oh, that's wonderful," the old man replied. "You see, I love sake too." He went on to talk about the persimmon tree in his garden, and how he and his wife enjoyed a little bottle of sake in the evening. As the old man spoke, the drunk's face began to soften. His fists unclenched. He started talking about how he loved persimmons too. The old man then asked him about his wife. "No," the laborer said, his voice cracking. "My wife died." He broke down sobbing, and began to tell the old man the sad story of his life, losing his wife, his home, his job. As Terry got off the train, he saw the drunken laborer with his head in the old man's lap, like a child. That, Goleman says, is emotional brilliance. The old man didn't fight aggression with aggression. He used empathy, rapport, and attunement to completely disarm the man's rage and connect with the pain and sorrow underneath. These 5 skills, self-awareness, self-management, motivation, empathy, and handling relationships, are the building blocks of emotional intelligence. But where do we learn them? Our first school for emotional learning is our family. In this intimate cauldron, Goleman says, we learn how to feel about ourselves, how others will react to our feelings, and how to manage our emotional world. Parents who are emotionally intelligent act as emotional coaches for their children. When their child is upset, they see it as an opportunity to teach. They help the child label their feelings, they empathize, and they help the child find positive ways to handle the emotion. The impact of this kind of parenting is enormous. Children with emotionally intelligent parents are better at handling their own emotions, they get upset less often, they are more popular with their friends, and they even do better in school. But what if you're born with a difficult temperament? What if you're an innately shy and fearful child? Is that your destiny? The answer, Goleman shows, is no. Temperament is not destiny. Jerome Kagan, a psychologist at Harvard, has studied shy children for decades. He found that about 15 to 20% of infants are born behaviorally inhibited. They have an overexcitable amygdala, meaning their neural alarm system is set on a hair trigger. They are more reactive to even mild stress. But Kagan found that not all of these timid infants grow up to be shy adults. The difference was how their parents handled their fearfulness. Parents who were overprotective, who tried to shield their child from every upsetting situation, actually made the fear worse. But parents who put gentle pressure on their children to be more outgoing, who created safe opportunities for them to face their fears in small, manageable doses, helped them overcome their shyness. These experiences help the child's brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, learn new, braver responses. They were, in effect, re-educating the emotional brain. This is a crucial point. Our brains are shaped by experience, especially in childhood. This is a window of opportunity for shaping lifelong emotional habits. But for too many children today, this window is being wasted. Goleman paints a sobering picture of the cost of emotional illiteracy. He points to rising rates of teen violence, suicide, drug abuse, depression, and eating disorders. He shares data showing that, on average, children are becoming more lonely and depressed, more angry and unruly, more nervous and impulsive than the generation before them. Families are under more stress than ever, and schools, for the most part, are completely ignoring this emotional side of life. And so, Goleman makes a powerful case for schooling the emotions. He takes us inside schools that are pioneering courses in emotional literacy or social and emotional learning. These aren't just for troubled kids, they're for everyone. The subject is life itself. In these classes, children learn to identify and label their feelings. They learn the difference between feelings and actions. They learn to control their impulses using simple tools like a stoplight method. Red light means stop, calm down, and think before you act. Yellow light means say the problem and think of solutions. Green light means go ahead and try the best plan. They learn empathy by taking the perspective of others. They learn the art of cooperation and conflict resolution. And these lessons aren't just taught in a special class, they are woven into the fabric of the school, from the playground to the cafeteria. Does it work? The evidence is overwhelming. Goleman summarizes the results of dozens of studies. Children in these programs show less aggression, better impulse control, and less anxiety and depression. They are more responsible, more cooperative, and more caring. And here's the part that should get every parent and educator to pay attention. These programs improve academic achievement. When children can manage their emotions, pay attention, and get along with others, they are better learners. Emotional literacy isn't a distraction from the real work of school. It's the foundation for it. In the end, Goleman argues, this set of skills has an old-fashioned name: character. The bedrock of character is self-discipline. The ability to put aside your own impulses to do right by others. And the root of altruism lies in empathy. Self-restraint and compassion, if there are any two moral stances our times call for, it is these. And they are both, at their core, skills of emotional intelligence. Commentary. When Daniel Goleman published Emotional Intelligence back in 1995, it felt like he was giving a name to something we had all felt but couldn't quite articulate. We all know people who are brilliant on paper but make a mess of their lives. And we all know people who may not have been the best students, but who just seem to sail through life, building strong relationships, leading teams, and finding a deep sense of contentment. Goleman gave us the language to understand why. He gave us the science to back it up. He showed us that our feelings aren't just random, messy interruptions to our rational lives. They are an ancient, powerful, and intelligent system that is trying to guide us. The problem is, most of us have never been taught how to listen to that guidance, how to understand its language, or how to work with it instead of against it. The most powerful lesson in this book, for me, is the idea of harmonizing head and heart. For centuries, we've been told that reason is king, and emotions are the unruly peasants that need to be suppressed. Goleman turns that idea on its head. He shows us that intellect cannot work at its best without emotional intelligence. They are partners. When those partners are working together well, our lives flourish. When they are at war, we struggle. This isn't just a feel-good idea, it's a deeply practical one. Think about the skills Goleman outlines: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, relationship skills. Are these not the very skills that determine success in almost every area of life? A marriage is a long conversation built on empathy. A successful career is built on persistence and the ability to work with others. A happy life is built on the ability to manage your own moods and find joy in what you do. This book is more than just a summary of fascinating research. It's a call to action. It's a plea for us to rethink what we value, what we teach our children, and how we measure a successful life. So how can you start applying these ideas, right now, today? Here are a few simple things you can try. First, practice simple self-awareness. Just a few times a day, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Try to put a name to it. Not good or bad, but something more specific. Am I frustrated? Anxious? Hopeful? Content? Just naming the feeling, without judging it, is the first step to managing it. It's like turning a light on in a dark room. Second, Practice active empathy. In your next conversation with someone, make a conscious effort to listen not just to their words, but to the feelings behind them. Look at their body language. Listen to their tone of voice. Ask yourself, how must they be feeling right now? You don't have to solve their problems. Just the act of trying to understand will deepen your connection in a powerful way. Finally, start to notice your own emotional hijackings. The next time you feel yourself getting really angry or anxious, instead of just being swept away, try to become the observer. Later, when you've calmed down, reflect on it. What was the trigger? What were the thoughts that ran through your mind? This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about learning your own emotional patterns so you can start to have a choice in how you respond, instead of just reacting. The book ends with Aristotle's challenge, and it's the perfect summary of this entire journey. He wrote, "Anyone can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy." That is the art of emotional intelligence. It's not a destination you arrive at, but a lifelong practice. It's the journey of becoming more conscious, more compassionate, and more fully human. And it is, without a doubt, one of the most worthwhile journeys you will ever take. That was the book summary of Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. We've touched on the major themes and stories today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary is like looking at a travel brochure. The real adventure happens when you take the trip yourself. The true power of this book is in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with your own life in a way you didn't expect. This summary is here to help you decide if this is a journey worth taking. If anything we've talked about today has struck a chord with you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning new ideas, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you understand yourself and the world around you. Also, if you found this summary valuable, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.